The disciples did not hand Judas Iscariot the money bag because no one else wanted it. They gave it to him because of the 12 men following an itinerant rabbi through the dust of Galilee. He was the one they trusted most with the thing that could destroy them fastest. There was no treasury, no temple stipend, no Roman patron, no collection plate passed through a synagogue with elders keeping ledgers. When Jesus of Nazareth walked from village to village with 12 men trailing behind him, the entire operation ran on a single container. The Gospel of John calls it the glossakomon, a small wooden box or purse, and whatever coin happened to be inside it on a given day. That box had to cover food for 13 men, lodging when they were not sleeping in fields, and alms for the poor because giving to beggars while traveling was not optional generosity in that world. It was a moral obligation the group could not be seen neglecting. Luke's gospel tells us that some women of means, including Joanna and Susanna, contributed to support the movement. Beyond that, the group lived on donations that arrived unpredictably from strangers, from sympathizers, from whoever happened to believe that day. Someone had to manage this. And managing it required things that not every fisherman pulled from a boat on the Sea of Galilee necessarily possessed. It required literacy, the ability to track what came in and what went out. It required arithmetic sharp enough to stretch a handful of denarii across a week of travel. It required negotiation because buying bread and lodging for 13 transient men in unfamiliar towns meant haggling, reading people, knowing when a price was fair and when it was an insult. And it required something harder to quantify: the trust of 11 other men who did not agree on much else. This detail matters more than it first appears. The 12 were not a uniform group of devoted friends. Simon was called the Zealot, a designation tied to a movement that wanted armed resistance against Rome. Matthew had been a tax collector, meaning he had once worked directly or indirectly for the very occupying power the Zealots wanted to overthrow. Fishermen like Peter, Andrew, James, and John carried the practical suspicion of laborers toward anyone who handled money without getting their hands wet. These men did not naturally trust each other. Handing one of them sole custody of the group's entire survival fund was not a small administrative choice. It was the single greatest point of vulnerability in the whole enterprise, and they gave it to Judas. Why him? The text never spells it out directly, but it does not need to. Trust like this is not assigned randomly, and it is not assigned to the least impressive man in the room. Somewhere in those early months, Judas demonstrated the kind of competence that made 11 other men comfortable sleeping while he held the coin. That is not a footnote. That is the entire premise of what happens next. Now walk into the house at Bethany 6 days before the final Passover. Jesus is reclining at a table. Mary, the sister of Lazarus, breaks open a container of pure nard, perfume so costly that John's Gospel puts its value at 300 denarii, roughly a year's wages for a laborer, and pours it over his feet, filling the house with its fragrance. And Judas speaks first. He asks why this perfume was not sold and the money given to the poor. On its face, it sounds like the objection of a man who cared about stewardship, about the mission's finances, about the very poor the group was obligated to help. It is the kind of question a good treasurer asks, and that is precisely why John's Gospel does not let the moment rest there. The text adds a line that most retellings quietly step around. Judas said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief, and as keeper of the money box, he used to help himself to what was put into it. Subscribe. Next week, we open the box Peter never wanted open. Sit with what that sentence actually claims. It does not say Judas was careless with the money. It does not say he mismanaged it. It says he had been stealing from it for some unspecified stretch of time quietly, while functioning every single day as the man everyone else relied on to keep the group alive. The public role and the private theft were not sequential. They were simultaneous. For however long this had been going on, Judas woke up every morning as the most trusted logistical mind among the 12, and went to sleep every night having taken something from the men who trusted him. That is a different kind of man than the villain of the Sunday school flannel board. That is a man under pressure most of his companions never faced, carrying the anxiety of an empty box on a hungry night, watching donations rise and fall, learning the market value of everything from bread to lodging to perfume, becoming by necessity the most financially literate man in the movement. And somewhere in that pressure, something eroded. Perhaps disappointment that the mission was not turning toward the political liberation some expected from a messiah. Perhaps resentment at watching resources spent on things like an extravagant anointing that did not align with his sense of the movement's priorities. The text does not diagram his psychology. It simply shows us the residue. A man skimming from a box he was trusted to protect months, maybe years, before he ever spoke to the chief priests. But that was not the worst part of what the box would reveal about him. When Judas finally goes to the religious authorities, the negotiation is almost clinical. Matthew's Gospel records the sum plainly. 30 pieces of silver, the exact price the law assigned to a slave gored by an ox. A detail no accident given how precisely the rest of Judas's financial life is documented. This was not a moment of chaotic passion. It was a transaction, negotiated by a man who had spent 3 years pricing bread, pricing lodging, pricing the cost of keeping 13 men fed on donations. He understood value. He understood exchange. He priced out the man he had walked beside for 3 years the same way he priced everything else, and got what he asked for. Here is the detail almost every retelling softens or skips entirely because it is far more disturbing than the alternative. The Gospels do not describe Judas as an outsider who slipped past the group's defenses, a wolf who fooled 11 sheep. They describe a man who was already inside, already competent, already carrying the responsibility no one else wanted or could handle, and already stealing from it. The betrayal at the end was not the corruption. It was the final transaction of a corruption that had been running quietly, undetected, for a long time before anyone noticed the fragrance of nard filling a room and asked the wrong question out loud. This is why the story unsettles more than it comforts. It does not tell us Judas was foolish, incapable, or marginal to the group. It tells us he was trusted. Trusted with literacy, with arithmetic, with negotiation, with the survival of 12 other men. And that trust and character were never the same thing. The corruption did not infiltrate the movement from outside its walls. It sat at the center of it, holding the box, balancing the accounts, walking beside the man it would eventually price at 30 pieces of silver, and for 3 years everyone around him simply called it management.